Raymond.
Right. She had a similar thing when it was crushed.
Well. Are you the Tarzan job this morning?
I've got enough left.
90p.
One of them.
I want that some good and then shoot us and just next to it.
No one there?
Yeah, okay.
Morning, Jeff.
No, it's to you, sir.
Another one. That's a double, that one there. I'll do it, John. The only charge is rolling over. No, we don't mind.
No.
What? You're never on the charge, mate. What's the charge you want? What about IC return? I'll put it right to something. No, you can't do that. You agreed on a price. I'll put it right to something. I'll put it right to something. Show me. You agreed on a price and that's a punishment. I think you've understood, didn't you? Which one are those, John? Which ones? Yes, tonight. Is he ready? Thanks, my darling, much obliged. Yes, ma'am. Half a mushroom. And the morning gathered mushrooms, those local mushrooms. $45 mushrooms. Can I give you a bag? No charge for the bag. 45. What else is it? Peppers are big, it's a thing. They're good, you know? Okay. 45 and you got 94. We got 94. 99. 149, madam. 49. 184. 184. 189. 219. Half a tomatoes, love. 219. 220. 262. Thanks, love. Much obliged, dear. Half a pound, madam. Love, thank you. Put those in your bag. 39.
You get a bit of a car, that's all.
78. Let me stop. 78 and you have 82, 112. Last 4. Beautiful those. 112. 70, 190, £2. 2. That's fine. Thanks, love. Much obliged. $2. 1 orange. 2 bananas. 2 pears. 35 in the banana, sir. 35, 65, 85. Thank you. You want to carry a bag? I'm alright, thank you. Sure. Best bananas, 54 you've got. And he said we'll... From Canary tomatoes. Salad tomatoes.
You try and keep the bag still so we don't have
Yes, I'm trying to get them put right.
When and in what way did you come in contact with the street traders?
Well, I joined Newcastle City Police as a very young officer in 1962, and I was 19 years of age then, and I was posted to what was A Division, which covered the city centre of Newcastle upon Tyne. And as a young officer, we had dealings with the Barra Boys in the city centre.
What dealings were they? Were they arrests or fines?
Well, we didn't arrest them in those days because principally there wasn't all that many of them. There were a small nucleus of them in certain streets in Newcastle, and they mainly sold fruit and vegetables. There was one site at the top of Northumberland Street, there was one in Clayton Street, Brunswick Place, Savile Row, and there's one or two more that I can't remember, but there was a small nucleus of bar boys. And of course at that time there used to be a lot more policemen on the beat, but that's another subject. And the policeman on the beat had to get to know everybody that worked on his beat. And of course he naturally came into contact with those bar boys who were in his area.
In what way were they a nuisance?
I wouldn't tend to use the word nuisance. I mean, they were committing offences against the law. We used to get a lot of complaints from shop premises because bar boys, they were selling fruit and vegetables. They didn't pay rates. They were taking business away from the shops. And of course they didn't have washing facilities, which they should have had as part of environmental health, you know. We also got complaints from members of the public. On occasions they would complain about substandard goods sold by certain bar boys. But on top of all that, it was against the law. They weren't allowed to be there. They weren't licensed by the local authority. So as the policeman on the beat, we had to do something about it.
Could you talk about the Highways Act and the actual acts that they did?
Yes, we didn't arrest them in those days because there wasn't all that many of them. We used to report them by way of summons. We used to summons them for obstructing the highway, which is an offence under the Highways Act of 1959. That was the main offence that we used.
And was there later on stuff like that? Were there messy people?
I wouldn't say they were messy people. They always took away their empty boxes and one thing and another. But they were there. They shouldn't have been there. And we had to do something about it.
In which way did the police try to solve the continuous illegal trading?
Well, in the 60s, when as I said, when I was. Can I break the interview to tap
Yeah.
Inspector Piet? Yeah. Yes, okay. 18th of what, Ray? Yeah, okay, that's the weekend before I go to Romania. That's all right, yeah, 18th of April. Cheers. No, I'll be away.
It's the headphones.
Cheers, no. Yes, sorry.
I'll just see that.
Wait a minute. Yeah?
Let's give them some feedback on that.
Take the plug out. Right.
In what way did the police try to solve continuous illegal trading?
Well, as the 60s progressed into the 70s, the bar boy population seemed to increase, and I think the word barrow boys is a misnomer, because what was happening was we were getting an influx of people selling cheap jewellery, lighters, wrapping paper, and one thing and another, and it was becoming a huge problem. The numbers trebled. So at that stage we had to do something. It was no good reporting them by summons, because what happened was when the policemen went away, they just continued to sell. So under the Highways Act we have a power of arrest for what is called willful obstruction of the highway. In other words, if they're told to move, they don't move, and they continue to sell and cause a crowd to collect. That is a willful obstruction of the highway, and as such they can be arrested. And that's what we started to do, was to arrest them, to take them away from the source, if you will, into the police station. it became a big problem, particularly at Christmas time when they seemed to come from not just Newcastle, from all over the county or the north of England, if you like. So we had to do something about it, purposely do something about it.
Why do you think that it was the same people continually were getting fined? Why do you think that they kept at it?
Well, the obvious answer to that is the fact that it was their livelihood. They were regulars. I knew most of them, although trying to recall names now is a long time ago. They all knew the policeman in the city centre, because at that time a policeman used to work a beat for 6 months, sometimes a year. So they all knew the policeman, he knew them, and I wouldn't say we had a working relationship, but we had an understanding that if they got caught, then they were summoned.
Some street traders complained of police harassment, that they were getting singled out and having special attention.
Well, I wouldn't agree with that. Certainly, to my knowledge, no one received any harassment and no one was singled out. If they were caught selling or caught trading, then they were arrested, simple as that.
Did you actually make arrests of the Barrow Boys yourself?
No. As a young officer, all I did was report them by summons, and I was here for 12 years, and then I received 3 stripes and got promoted and went elsewhere. But I never actually arrested anyone. I always summons them, but it changed after I left here because it was becoming such a problem.
Do you have any idea at all how many people were fined, how many times a day, or how many fines were issued, and was it being a cost to taxpayers, etc.?
I can only speak from personal experience as a young officer in the city centre. I think the most occasions that I summoned anybody was 3 times in 8 hours. The same man. It was somewhat of a game. They used to have their what we call watchers or touts, who used to look out for the policemen coming, and we had to use our initiative to try and prevent them trading. In other words, you could walk through a shop and into the street behind them and things like that. But they understood that. They were prepared for that, and there was a good relationship.
I spoke to an ex-policeman on the beat who said that he was fond of the Barrow Boys, and if he saw the Barrow Boy illegal trading, he would give him a head start before he gave chase. Did you ever, under any circumstances, did you ever think, oh, I'll give him a chance?
Well, I've given them chances before. Yes, I haven't given them head starts. I've perhaps done a Nelson, if I can say that, on a couple of occasions. That is, turn a blind eye. Yes. That was in those days called working a beat, you see. We had you had to talk to people, you had to get to know them.
Has legalisation that they now have licences, has that proved an advantage in any way that you can think of, or also has it proved to be a disadvantage?
No, I certainly wouldn't say that it's a disadvantage. The licensing of Barrow Boys, i.e. street traders, has taken a certain amount of weight off our shoulders, and they've provided a service to the general members of the public. The street traders now we're concerned about are the ones who aren't licensed, who again stand, for example, in the entrance to Eldon Square, selling various bits and pieces. They are a problem, which we're constantly looking at. But as far as the old Barrow Boys are concerned, they are licensed, they have regular pitches, and I would say they're certainly a good advert for the city of Newcastle. Colourful is the word I would use.
the barrow boys were once illegal as people who sell in St Square are illegal now. Do you think there's a difference between the street trader of today and the barrow boys?
Yes, the barrow boys of old were all people who, as I said before, provided a service. The ones we have today are out for a quick buck, if I can put it like that. And they're selling various bits and pieces of shoddy goods. At Christmas they sell wrapping paper, which is fair enough. But the problem that we have is they cause a big crowd to collect, and as such that's illegal. They're not licensed by the local authority, and they're committing offences.
Do you have a general opinion of the barrow boys? You've touched on it before, you said they were colourful. Do you have anything to say in their favour, or have you got strong opinions against them?
No, certainly not. I haven't got strong opinions against them. They, particularly when I was working on them, they knew who I was, I knew who they were, I knew them all by their first name, and they understood that if they got caught trading, they were so-and-so. So you can say that we had a relationship.
Do you think they had character to the
Yes, I do, yes. Yes, and in a way I'm pleased they're licensed. I'm pleased they are have licensed pitchers. Some of the actual barrows, if I can put it like that, have been handed down through generation to generation.
And that's kind of most issues. Do you have anything? Is there anything else you feel that is worth saying, you'd like to say, or do you think that's covered everything?
I think that's about covered everything as far as they are concerned. Yes.
Well, thank you very much for your time.
Not at all.
Okay. This will take very long, doesn't it? Are you ready then? Right. How did you come into contact with the street traders?
Well, in contact with the street traders, it came under the Local Government Provisions Act 1982, which asked us to do some things. And of course, like good people, good councillors, you consult the people involved. And that's how we first made our contact.
Was there a noticeable change in street trading in the 1970s in particular?
Well, the difference from 1970 to 1982 was, of course, street traders were all over the city. And, of course, they weren't well received by certain shops in the city because they felt they took trade away from them. Under the 1982 position, of course, with them having to be licensed, it meant, of course, that we defined the sites where the street traders could go. And there was a reduction in the number of street traders within the said city.
So you mentioned some shops made complaints. Who else made complaints about street trading so that you as a councillor had to do something about it?
Basically, the complaints could arise from people who, did not like dealing with street traders, and they preferred going to a shop. Whereas other people used to love the old street trader with his old barrow and nicely painted. But I think the main feeling was that there was getting in the city what we call a overloading or an overflowing of street traders. There were some genuine ones, but we had a lot of people coming in from outlying areas. And the feeling was that it was getting too much out of hand. And bearing in mind that the major complaints were from the shops, we felt we had to do something about it. After all, street trader didn't pay rent, and they didn't pay certain other things. And they felt that he was able to sell his goods cheaper than what they were doing. The result of that, of course, was that they were losing some business, and they felt they were right and proper to object.
Why did the council legalise trading rather than ban it altogether?
The reason why the council legalised it was many of us felt that it had a heritage. That heritage was important to the city. And some, who I know personally, had served our city for many, many years. And going back to the grandmothers and the grandfathers, and we felt they were a part of the city. We didn't want to ban them, but we looked at the question how best we could help them, how best could we help the people who make the complaints, and we reached a compromise.
Why do you think it took until 1981 for the bar boys to be legalised? Why did it take so long?
Well, it's a good question. How does it take so long to do something? I basically take a point of view. I don't mind how long it takes. Well, it takes 10, 20 years, 25 years. Provided at the end of the day, all people have been consulted. Because you see, it's not only consultants, street traders and shopkeepers and other people. It's listening to what they have to say and then considering that and then taking it back to them. And then finally they may say, well, you've got to make a decision, councillor. I said, yes, that's my job. But a period of time can go by. But subject to everyone being happy that we've done the best we can, then it must come down to a question, well, what is the decision? And of course, as you rightly know, things can't be done overnight. In local government, I'm very proud of the fact that we're not one of these people who just say it shall be done now and it shall be done our way. We have a proud record, I think, in this city of listening to people. The only danger is, of course, that until you make a decision, people start saying the council's going to do this and the council's going to do that. In reality, it's not. It's still talking to people. That's why it takes so long.
Has legislation improved relationships between the bar boys and the shop traders and the market traders, for example, in the Green Zone?
The question, has it improved the understanding between everyone? I think the council, the street traders, the shopkeepers, normal people who use the street traders are very, very happy. One, the people who trade from the street traders are happy that they can still go to their favourite one, get what they require, whether it's fruit or flowers. The shops are happy because now, of course, those traders pay a fee, and they feel, well, right and proper, and they also know where they should be in their defined area. And so there is, what shall I say, quite now a happy agreement between us all, I hope.
How does the council decide who can have a pitch and where the pitch will actually be situated? How did you work out where they would actually be so there wouldn't be any?
Well, what we did, basically, the council looked at the question where the pitches should be, how big it should be, where we should put them, who should get them. And you'll not believe this, but some of them, to prove that they were genuine street traders, brought in big books like that, which had certificates going back the 17th century, I think, some of them, which said their grandmother and their grandfather had been genuine street traders then. So we went right through that history. Then you had to consider, could you put two fruit street traders together? And that wasn't right, because it meant they were just fighting each other. So then we had to consider we would have a fruit trader here, and then over here we would have a flower seller. Where to put them? We had to be mindful that the police will object to obstructions on the pavement. We had to put them in areas where there was reasonable movement for the public to go around them. So if you go down Northumberland Street now, you'll find one at the metro station, which allows a certain movement around it. I think the next one's not far away from Marks and Spencer's, and there's only about a pavement room. And the next one is at the bottom of Blackett Street, Northumberland Street on the junction. Once again out the road of anyone. So that was the first stop marked, to try and give everyone a reasonable return on their street training. 2 was to ensure that there was no obstruction, otherwise police would have not allowed us to put it there. 3, that the conditions, as you will appreciate, that they had hot water and so forth, that when they handled the fruit, they didn't contaminate other ones, because that is what it's all about. And then we had to consider who is going to be the people responsible for street training. And come the end of the day, I think we came down to a very small number. Very keen though, and they all wanted to be in Northumberland Street, which couldn't be allowed, of course. We have some, as you know, in Percy Street, and 1 or 2 outside the Eldon Square on the same street. But any amount of room to manoeuvre, so we came down with a limited number. They were quite happy. Some retired from the business altogether, because I've got to say this, many of those street traders were elderly people, and where the conditions where they were having to go, I think they felt nice time to bow out. But of course we noted that and give it a bit of publicity.
So how many licenses are there for the street traders? How many applications did you have and how many actually have licenses?
Roughly, I would think, and I can't be quoted on this because I'm not aware of the number at that time, because it's going a long way back. But we did have, I would think, in excess of 60 to 70. And at the present moment, I think roughly going on what we have now, I would think we have about 40.
What restrictions are imposed on the size of the site and the working conditions?
Well, the size of the site is marked with studs, and these, of course, say where they can put the stall. They can have a mobile stall, by the way, and the pitches. There's flexibility in shape, and it wasn't expensive. We put these studs in, and the only thing we say about them is, of course, that the conditions must prevail where they have all, as I said previously, hot water, and that cleanliness is very important, that the stall is covered, and if it's a certain kind of fruit, then it has to be covered. But we're only talking about very soft fruit that may get damaged during the weather. So basically, that's how we marked them off. And they were quite happy. I mean, a lot of them are well within inside the studs. Others are right on the market line, but it depends what they have. I think we have, if I remember right, about 1 or 2 mobiles. The rest are all what we call the old street trader barrels.
I understand as enforcement officers go around so many times a year to check that the requirements are being met.
Yes, enforcement officers, I hate to say enforcement officers, because I feel that the street traders do a wonderful job. And we don't find many that don't comply with the regulations laid down. In fact, I can't remember one for some period of time now. And we believe in not hitting people, is that the right word? No, it's the wrong word. We don't believe in being harsh on our street traders because they understand us and we understand them. We've got a close relationship. And if they've got a problem, they come into the department and say, look, I'm having difficulty here. Can you help me? On the other hand, if the enforcement officer finds his bucket missing or he's not washing his hands when he should do, he will politely remind him and say, when are you going to get the bucket? And maybe 3 days later he'll drop in on him and say, have you got it? If he persists in doing that, then you know the answer, what the answer must be. But that is their job. But not only on enforcing street training, you see, those same enforcement officers could be doing enforcement work on taxis, so that they have an overall flexible job. So we combine it with many other things, those enforcement officers.
Why do you think the street traders did not bring their issue to you? It had to wait until there was a lot of complaints made and the issue got right out of hand. Why do you think they didn't approach you a long time ago to get it solved?
Well, that's a very good point. Why didn't they approach us on the difficulties they were having? But then again, it's true to say that many people, even ordinary people, find it very, very difficult to come into a building like you're in now, civic centre, to talk about common problem. They find it very awesome. And I think maybe they're right. I'm a great believer that as a councillor, my job is out there, talking to my people, listening to them. And if you have the two-way process where you can understand one another, you can defeat anything. But things do take a long time to come on the complaint side. And then again, I've got to tell you, on the complaint side, you can take a case and lose it. Simply on, what shall we say, legal grounds. So there may be a reticence on their part to come forward. There might have been reticence on the council's part and say, well, everything seems all right. We only get the 1 and 2 complaints. But come the end of the day, of course, sometimes it can build up, and you've got to take those.
Do you have anything to say against the Barrow Boys, anything at all?
No, I can't say that I have anything about Barrow Boys at all. Often chat to them. And if I take Mr. Sayers, we became friends over the years, so we're still talking about this thing. And they all provide, in my view, a part of the city. It's unusual in a way. You don't get the Gateshead. They have the metro centre, and in there you will find a kind of street trader where you got the malls and the boroughs and that. My view is that we have the best of both worlds. People can see them, know who they are, in actual fact queue up, and then they have a little banter and chatter amongst themselves. So I feel they're part of us. And, no, I have never had a complaint against them.
Do you think the street traders are where they are now, mainly because of Albert Sayers and because he was the leader of the Barrow Boys Association? He led the campaign to fighting for legalised pictures. So do you think where they are now is a lot of it is due to Albert Sayers?
No, I don't think the question of pictures was led by anyone. I think the determination was quite simple that the council looked at it overall. I will agree that Mr. Sayers was one of the foremost people in leading it, but a lot of hard work was done by a certain councillor in here. He's dead now, unfortunately. And when I was chairman of Health and Environment, he took that matter aboard, and he put a lot of hard work into it. And as I said before, with respect to Mr. Sayers, Councillor Yellowly, or other people, the basics were quite simple. We said we'd look after them, and we reached some kind of agreement. And then we then had to look at the question, where did we put them? And we used to have a person who had an ice cream van, and they always wanted to have a site in the city, but didn't give it.
Why did the fines not deter the Barrow Boys before legalisation? Why do you think they kept going on the streets again and again and getting a list of, because some people are claiming to have been fined about 70 times?
Well, let me ask you, or return the question that you asked me about why did not defer or deter the traders in those days and still keep paying the fines. because they believed it was a livelihood. And you know, you got to remember that comes a time when fines don't deter anyone. And so people will keep on doing it, provided they can still make sufficient money to keep them going. But you see, let me bring you up now to 1992. We still have people in the city who's illegally street trading. And you'll have heard them when you go down Northumberland Street. Now these people are being fined all the time and brought in, but provided that they can do it from private premises, you can't touch them. So, but again I come back to you, is the question of the fines high enough to stop these people? It mustn't be, because they're still there and you've heard them, and you can see them selling goods. So, no, I don't think the fines would have stopped the street traders in the old days. They were happy to do what they were doing. It might have deterred one or two people who were not making sufficient money to pay those fines.
Can I finally just ask you to say that it was the Miscellaneous Act of whatever year that you could give them the licence with, just so we know what the actual act is?
Well, if you want to know what the actual act is, I have to refer to the paper given to me, which was the Street Trading Local Government Miscellaneous Provisions Act of 1982 and the Turning Weir Act of 1980. And the extract that I'm referring to at the present moment, there was a licensing subcommittee who dealt with street traders, and this extract, when they were considering, was the 3rd of February 1984.
Thank you very much. That was really good.
Before you go, can I just get a couple of shots without you talking or anything, just of you looking through the
Yes,
papers and stuff?
by all means.
Quite well, didn't we?
Good. Morning, women. Morning.
I've been street trading since I was 12, before even, you know. We used to sort of sell carrier bags and always involved with selling. My mother and her mother right back, you know, well over 100 years, they've all been trading in Newcastle, all fruit traders, all in the centre of Newcastle. It's been a long time.
Alva's mother was a very, very hard worker. She worked on the barrow every day. She went to mass every morning, and I'm talking every morning. 8 o'clock mass for 50 years. She would stand on her stall all day. They're a different breed. They're a breed on their own.
My family's probably the oldest street trading family in Newcastle, or one of them.
And as a young officer, we had dealings with the barrow boys in the city centre. They were selling fruit and vegetables. They didn't pay rates. They were taking business away from the shops. And of course they didn't have washing facilities, which they should have had as part of environmental health, you know. But on top of all that, it was against the law. They weren't allowed to be there. They weren't licensed by the local authority. So as the policeman on the beat, we had to do something about it.
One of the problems in those days were you traded without a license, so you were fined, and then if you didn't pay your fines, you were sent to prison, you know.
We didn't arrest them in those days because there wasn't all that many of them. We used to report them by way of summons. We used to summons them for obstructing the highway, which is an offence under the Highways Act of 1959. I think the most occasions that I summoned anybody was 3 times in 8 hours. The same man.
I was fined for illegal street trading on many occasions, probably 100 times or more even. We had to go to prison sometimes really for non-payments of fines, but really it was a stand just to let people know what we were doing, you know. And we wanted people to take notice that we thought we were entitled to make a living, an honest living. In the last 10 years, we had some councillors who stepped forward and thought that we were entitled to get a living, that we were entitled to stand in the centre of Newcastle, and so they helped us, you know.
Well, in contact with the street traders, it came under the Local Government Provisions Act 1982, which asked us to do some things. And of course, like good people, good councillors, you consult the people involved. And that's how we first made our contact.
I started the Barrow Boys Association, and I thought that if a group of people got together as a body, you know, it would be stronger, and the council would take more notice of us.
Under the 1982 position, of course, with them having to be licensed, it meant, of course, that we defined the sites where the street traders could go, and there was a reduction in the number of street traders within the said city.
The licensing of Barrow Boys, i.e. street traders, has taken a certain amount of weight off our shoulders, and they provided a service to the general members of the public.
It's better because we can stand in one particular site now. At one time we couldn't, we were moved by the police. My stand is Savile Row in Newcastle, which is just off Northumberland Street. And I have a 4-wheelbarrow, which is very old, and it's beautifully decorated. Supposedly it's the only one of its kind in England. It's very beautiful. It's a bit of an attraction.
As far as the old Barrow Boys are concerned, they are licensed, they have regular pitches, and I would say they're certainly a good advert for the city of Newcastle. Colourful is the word I would use.
The reason why the council legalised it was many of us felt that it had a heritage. That heritage was important to the city.
Albert is a man who relates to women. He has a respect in women that a lot of men, unfortunately, don't have. And he relates to women, and they like that, and they relate to him. And he sells those ladies the best fruit money can buy, and I've seen it. I've seen him lose money on deals, but as long as they go home with good stuff in their shopping bags, he's happy.
Well, I like to buy from Albert because he's very good, and you can tell him what you want. You know, you can say, can I have this? Whereas if you go into the likes of the Granger market, they just give you the produce, and very often it's not that good. He's very friendly. He always asks about my daughter and how she's getting on, and he tells me about his daughter too and his family. It's very nice.
Well, the reason people come to my stall is because, first of all, I like to think that I sell the best fruit in Newcastle. Secondly, we have a personal relationship with all of our customers. I like to sell the best. I like to put a smile on the customer's face, and that's why we are the best.
You can't be laid back when you're married to a street trader. It's a very stressful life.
My wife works with me on the store. She helps me display, and she sells, and she drives, and she does the books. I'd say she was the backbone of the business, really.
I would say Albert Sayers is the best barrow boy in the country. I have never met such a responsible man as Albert, because he's a winner. He's not a loser. and he will fight to win. But he will do it right, as he's always done.